Welcome back. Today we're digging into a source that points out a very direct pattern in U.S. foreign policy. And we're looking at two places you probably wouldn't lump together: the icy expanses of Greenland and the oil fields of Venezuela. So, what on earth is the connection? That's what we're here to figure out.
So the source we're breaking down today kicks things off with this line, which kind of sets the tone, right? It's all about framing a super direct, here's what we want approach to foreign relations. No beating around the bush at all. So what does that actually look like in practice? Let's jump into the first case.
All right, first up, we're heading way up north to the Arctic. We're talking about the goal of acquiring Greenland. Now, I know a lot of people just laugh this off at first, calling it absurd, but the source we're looking at shows how this went from, just the wild idea to something being seriously considered as actual policy.
And this quote right here, it pretty much says it all. The source highlights this because it just cuts right through all the noise. When you lead with national security like that, it's a pretty clear signal that, hey, maybe old-school diplomacy isn't the top priority on the list.
Okay, so you're probably asking, why Greenland? What is the big deal? Well, the source breaks it down into three huge reasons. First, its location is just incredible. It's literally the shortest route between North America and Europe. Second, it's a perfect spot for keeping an eye on Russian naval activity in the Arctic. And third, and this is a big one, it's sitting on a massive treasure trove of minerals, oil, and natural gas.
Now, to be clear, U.S. interest in Greenland isn't some brand new thing. I mean, there's been a military presence there since the 50s. But what the source really points to is how things ramped up. We went from a defense agreement to a straight-up offer to buy the island, and then to appointing a special envoy whose whole job is focused on this. That's a pretty serious escalation.
All right, let's switch gears and head south, way south, from the freezing Arctic to the heat of Latin America. This time, the target isn't land. It's a resource, a very, very valuable one: Venezuelan oil.
So how did this whole situation even come about? The source walks us through it step by step. It all started with U.S. sanctions that basically stopped Venezuela from selling its oil. You can imagine the problem that created, right? Their storage facilities were filled to the brim, completely overflowing, and right at that moment, the U.S. comes in with a proposal to take that oil and sell it.
And we are not talking about a small amount here. The plan was to take somewhere between 30 and 50 million barrels of high-quality Venezuelan crude. That is a huge number. Just to give you a sense of scale, that's a staggering amount of one of the most important resources on the entire planet.
So, what's that worth? Well, based on market prices at the time, we're talking about almost $2 billion. A number like that really shows you just how massive the financial side of this proposed deal was.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, and it's a key detail the source makes sure to highlight. The plan said the money from selling the oil would be personally controlled by the president, and the stated goal? To help both Americans and Venezuelans. But the source also points out that there wasn't a clear system for how that would actually work, which, naturally led to a lot of questions about transparency. So, we have Greenland and we have Venezuela. Two totally different parts of the world, two totally different situations. But the source we're looking at says, hold on a second. These aren't just random isolated events. They actually might show a consistent pattern of action.
And this chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? With Greenland, the target was strategic territory. With Venezuela, a strategic resource. Now, the public reasons were different, national security versus economic and humanitarian. But the method? The source argues it was basically the same: a direct, unilateral move to get control of a major asset.
So, as you can probably guess, moves this bold didn't exactly fly under the radar. The rest of the world was definitely watching, and a lot of traditional U.S. allies in particular started to get pretty nervous.
Yeah, the reaction from Europe is super telling. It really shows this clash of worldviews. You had leaders from the UK, France, and others put out this joint statement. They were basically saying, hey, let's not forget Denmark is a NATO ally here. And they kept bringing up the UN Charter and international law. It's that classic focus on alliances and rules versus a more direct, what's in it for us approach.
And then you have this quote. It's a joint statement from the prime ministers of both Denmark and Greenland. It is so powerful because it just cuts right to the heart of the matter. They're saying, look, you can't just annex another country. They're flat out rejecting that national security argument, saying a country's sovereignty comes first, period. And that really leaves us with the big question that this source puts on the table.
Is this all just about one island and a bunch of oil? Or are we seeing something bigger here? A real shift in how a global superpower deals with the rest of the world, maybe choosing direct action over the old rules of diplomacy? What do you think? What's the biggest takeaway for you here?